sometimes I just want to be honest. I want to be honest and just be like, the gap of my knowledge with other people that engage in political discussion is so wide that it is physically painful. It gets to be painful at a certain point because it's like, okay, this person is they're coming at me with 100 miles an hour on something they have not thought about, right? And they don't know anything. So it's like, how can we even have a discussion at this point? Because like I have to do a remedial thing. They'll just make statements. They'll just say Andy Bashir is pro-trans. They'll just say that. Because somebody tweeted that. And then it's like, no, he's not. He did the bare minimum once, and then his veto was overridden. Like, it was a symbolic veto that was overridden. And then he's come out with multiple anti-trans kid statements, and people pretend like he's some sort of trans fucking champion. Like, what are you talking about?
You asked what real change might
Walz
look
is
like.
bad. He's always been bad. Did you miss the campaign? Have you had a fucking brain aneurysm? He came out there in the vice presidential debate and said he would support Israel attacking Iran. He did nothing. He took all the goodwill and he squandered it. And he stood next to the Holocaust terrorist campaign. He's not our guy. We were hopeful. This is what's so confusing to me. Do you people not have memory? Like, we were hopeful he was going to be a certain way, and then he wasn't that way. Like, do you understand that the hope ended when he failed? Like, God damn, dude.
Like, and I think it's that is a really interesting question for liberals and radicals.
Somebody said Tim Walz is like a Euro sock dem. No, he is not. Unless you mean sock dem in name only, but actual neocon liberal, then yeah, he's that. I'm sorry that the Tim Walz that I was hoping for is not what emerged on the national political stage. He is not that. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's okay to think one thing and then when new information comes in, change your mind. I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, you went to the emergency room because your balls were sore. And I thought, the most likely reason for your balls to be sore is that you got kicked in the balls. And then you're like, nope, I never got kicked in the balls. My next step should be like, okay, trauma is unlikely. Let's move that down the list. And then it'll be like, let's get an X-ray or an MRI or a CAT scan and look at the testicles for cancer. And lo and behold, both of your balls are riddled with cancer. And because you're a Democrat, there's only one fucking there's only one prescription for a Democrat. That is removing both balls and turning them back into the cucked eunuch that they are destined to be.
Because there is a hunger for change out there among millions of people who feel sort of insecure, uncertain about the future, and do want that to change. I think the change only comes through a big imaginative idea, the sort of picture of another kind of future, which gives people, which connects with that fearfulness in the back of people's minds and offers them a release from it. That's the key thing. But I think the question for liberals and radicals is that they are always suspicious of big ideas. That's what lurks underneath the liberal mindset. And the reason is, and they're quite right in a way, is look what happened last time when millions of people got swept up in a big idea. Look at the last 100 years at what happened in Russia and then in Germany. The point is that change, political change is frightening. It's scary. It's thrilling, because it is dynamic and it's doing something to change the world, but it is scary because it can change things in ways where nothing is secure. It's like being in an earthquake. Even the solid ground underneath you begins to move and things dissolve that you think are solid and real. And I think that the question liberals and the left have to face at the moment is a really sort of difficult question, which is, do you really want change? Do you really want it? Because if you do, many of them might find themselves in a very uncertain world where they might lose all sorts of things. What we're talking about in many cases is people who are at the centre of society at the moment. They're not out of the margins. They would have a lot to lose from real political change because it really would change things in the structure of power. Or, and this is the brutal question, do you just want things to change a little bit? Do you just want the banks to be a little bit nicer, say? Or people to be a little more respectful of each other's identities? All of which is good. But basically, you carry on living in a nice world where you tinker with it. That's the key question. But you can't just sit there forever worrying about big ideas, because there are millions of people out there who do want change. And the key thing is, they feel they've got nothing to lose. You might have lots to lose, but they feel they've got absolutely nothing to lose. But at the moment, they're being led by the right. So things won't remain the same. But society may go off in ways that you really don't want. So in answer to your question, what you need is a powerful vision of the future, with all its dangers. But it's also quite thrilling. It would be an escape from the staticness of the world that we have today. And to do that, you've got to engage with the giant forces of power that now run the world at the moment. You might, but the key thing is in confronting those powers and trying to transform the world, you might lose a lot. This is a sort of forgotten idea, is that actually you surrender yourself up to a big idea, and in the process you might lose something. But you'd actually gain in a bigger sense because you'd change the world for the better. And I know it sounds soppy, but this is the forgotten thing about politics, is that you give up some of your individualism to something bigger than yourself. You surrender yourself, and it's a lost idea. And I think, really, in answer to your question, is you can spot real change happening when you see people from the liberal middle classes beginning to give themselves up to something, surrender themselves for something bigger than themselves. And at the moment, there is nothing like that in the liberal imagination.
I just feel like we're in a situation where I don't think most liberals who posture as leftists actually want change. They just don't want change. That's legitimately it. God, the Ethan Klein stuff, man. They just don't want change. That's why they're like, Tim Walz and Andy Bashir. Because those guys, and I think the thing that's important to say about them is, yeah, fat guy in bed, I see that. We'll take a look at it. They don't actually want change. I don't think you can wake up in the morning and go, Tim Walz, he's going to deliver change for our country. That's not a thing. I think one of the things that is a weakness of mine is that I listen to what people say. Lying is OP. Lying is OP. So somebody says, I want change, or I'm a leftist, they get so much credibility with me from that. And then it has to slowly be chipped away before I'm like, oh, this person doesn't know what any of those things mean. I need to stop giving people the benefit of the doubt on things like that. Like, I need to stop giving people the benefit of the doubt because they call themselves a left winger or a social democrat or anything else. Like, I need to stop and just being like, okay, the average person has no idea what these words mean. Maybe they voted for Bernie Sanders in 2020 primary, but that's about it. We've got a nice hour-long video that I wanted to watch with Adam Conover about this stuff, because this is where my mind's at right now, chat. My mind is at the fact that, you know, if you guys were here when Trump was sworn in 2020, we didn't have the same like, it wasn't the same. Or sorry. If you were first here in 2019 when Trump was president, we didn't have the same attitude toward politics as we do today. Like, that's just the facts. And that's because I'm changing according to experiences that we're having.
Conover, thanks so much for joining me on the show again. Bit of a dark moment for America, safe to say. You know, if you care about this country, if you want things to be better here, well, you have a lot of reason for despair right now, I think. A lot of things that I care about very deeply are being damaged, destroyed. Things that I wanted to see improved seem like they are no longer happening. The scope of possibility in this country has suddenly narrowed in a way that I have never anticipated. You know, I did a show for Netflix a couple of years ago called The G Word about the federal government and how essential it is to our lives. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. I'm very proud of it. But I guess the show didn't work because now we are seeing a billionaire who used his money to basically install himself as president or a shadow president destroy the federal government day by day without any recognition of what it actually fucking does. If you care about climate change, racism, criminal justice reform, the effort to rein in corporate power, or even something as simple as continuing to have planes land without crashing, the prospects aren't fucking great right now. Now, in the past, when faced with challenges like this, we have seen people take to the streets, the civil rights movement, the women's movement. So many times in American history, average people have stood up and demanded.
I think I'm going to make a prediction that people are not going to like, but this is going to be the administration where people understand that protests in America are no different than protests are in Iran right now or Egypt. Does anybody think that if people just went to the streets and started protesting in Iran, that it would cause the regime to fall? Does anybody think that if people just went to the streets and started protesting in Egypt, it would cause the regime to fall, or Pakistan? You understand that there is a coercive, bloodthirsty state that's willing to use, unlimited force to suppress protests, right? So people going out to protest are literally taking their lives into their hands. This will be the presidential campaign where people finally start to understand that that is the reality that is arising in America. And it's been a long, slow climb to this, or descent to this point. But now mainstream Republican politicians cheer the deaths of protesters. They're calling for the pardon of George Floyd's killer, Derek Chauvin. They celebrate mass killer, the fat-bodied Kyle Rittenhouse. Like, this is the they're celebrating. The Democrats are working hand in hand with the Republicans to criminalize protesting Israel. You guys are, the idea of just going to the streets, it's not the same.
The change that we need, to the extent that we now think of that as one of the main ways that change is made in this country. But in response to the moment we're in right now, it seems like we are seeing less of that. The resistance, if not totally absent, seems suppressed, dampened, a little bit glum. So given all that we are facing, what the fuck do we actually do? That is what everyone is asking. That is what I feel is incumbent upon me to share with you. So many people come up to me when I'm, after my stand-up shows. I do a meet and greet after every stand-up show, and they say, your work has given me hope in a dark time. And I'm like, well, I'm happy to have played that role a little bit, but I don't have all the answers. I'm just feeling around for them the same as anyone else. But I am going to try to bring you some of those answers today, or at least chart a little bit of a path forward. We have an incredible guest on the show today who studies social movements and social change and how they happen and how protests have changed the world in the past and why they have failed to at times. We are going to have a fascinating conversation about that I feel confident is going to give you a path forward if that is what you personally are looking for. Before we get to that, I want to remind you that if you want to support the show and all the conversations we bring you, you can do so on Patreon. Head to patreon.com/Adam Conover. $5 a month gets you every episode of this show ad-free. And if you'd like to come see me out on the road and come say hi to me in the meet and greet line after every show, well, my stand-up tour is continuing across the country. Actually, dare I say the world. March and South change happen in this country. She's the director of the Center for Environment, Community, and Equity and professor in the School of International Service at American University. Please welcome Dr. Dana Fisher. Dana, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thanks for having me.
So last time you were on, we were talking about
favorability of Democrats in Congress is now -20. Registered voters -26. Independents -37. Wow. Democrats is 54% disapprove, 34% approve. Republicans is 41% approve, 48% disapprove.
the climate crisis. You are actually
the stock market is having another really bad day, another down day in the stock market. Dropping, it's been accelerating. It started small, but it's accelerating. Crypto's down, oil's down. They're kind of recession. Oh, wow. Crypto dropped a nice little 1.5% back to 88,000. Looks like the markets are starting to consider that we have a recession might be on the table.
Last in a long line of climate experts I had on the show talking about what we can do to solve climate change. And we had some Pollyanna-ish solutions. People say, oh, we'll just get some better technology. It'll be nice. And you came on to give what I felt was a very appropriate amount of doom mixed with hope of, hey, a lot of that shit's not going to work, but there are real things that we can do. It's just going to be a larger political, social, revolutionary moment than we anticipate, or that a lot of Pollyannas anticipate. Last time we talked to you was maybe about a year ago. Now we're facing even more crises than the climate crisis. We're facing, I think, beyond creeping authoritarianism in America. Maybe like jogging authoritarianism. Maybe it's doing a nice hop and a skip.
I think it's like a accelerating authoritarianism.
Accelerating is it's picking up it's picking up speed.
Certainly, yes.
You wanted to slow down, it's picking up speed. And that is also countering progress on name an issue that you care about. Climate, criminal justice, any of them.
Civil rights.
All of them are being affirmatively rolled back. Mm-hmm. And so now we have even more things that we need to fight against, right? People are really in a dark place out there, people who care about those issues. And I thought it was a nice time to have you back on to talk about, like, what the fuck do we do now, right? If we needed a social revolution, people in the streets, a mass movement to stop climate change, well, now we need 6 or 7 or 8 more mass movements. And it does not seem that there is one in the offing, as far as I can tell.
Well, the good news is, so my last book before Saving Ourselves was called American Resistance, which basically documented the resistance to the Trump administration and its policies during what now I guess we have to call Trump 1.0.
Economic recession coming? I think so. Can you explain the reason why Trump might want to crash the economy? I don't know that he's trying to crash the economy. He may just be stupid. Like, it's hard to say exactly what they're trying to do, but they might be trying to do like a shock doctrine.
Right? We're now we're now like knee deep into Trump 2.0. And actually what I've been shifting my attention to is Resistance 2.0 to see how, I mean, what I talked about in American Resistance was the way that the movements on the left joined together in a coalition to push back against the Trump administration and its policies during its first time in office. We're back here again. And one of the things that's really nice, I mean, this is the silver lining of a second Trump term, is that the left is starting to merge. And we are actually already seeing it. So, for example, today, my postdoc was sending me pictures. There were 5,000 people in the streets in D.C. We have had a protest every day in D.C. for the past 2 weeks with thousands of people in the street. Now, the media doesn't talk about it, but it's happening.
Okay, but I'm going to push back against you because I want you to counter my gloom here. So I'm going to bring the pessimistic take. I mean, I went to the Women's March in 2017. Thank you. And, you know,
here in D.C., I'm sorry, here in L.A.
In L.A.,
right.
There were thousands in every city. There were certainly hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
Single day of protests in U.S. history.
Right. Nothing similar now. And so it's a little hard to hear, oh, we got 5,000 people in D.C. I'm like, well, that sounds like an average day in D.C., right? There's 5,000 people pissed about something in D.C. every day. So,
okay.
You know.
I hear what you're saying, and I'll respond in this way. First of all, so last time around, there was a Women's March. The Women's March was huge and amazing. We had a People's March this time around where we had smaller numbers, but there were hundreds of thousands of people out in the streets across the country 2 days before the inauguration this time around.
Okay.
And since then, now after the first Women's March, what happened was people kind of went back to their homes.
Beta, how you doing,
a lot of them formed, chapters of Indivisible. They formed, what do they call them? Huddles of the Women's March. Other groups were formed.
The Women's March was destroyed by Zionists, who basically went in and said, everybody here is an anti-Semite because they don't support Zionism. And they had a big internal fight because, that's what happened to a Women's March, which they won't talk about because that will be uncomfortable.
10 days after the first Women's March, there was the travel ban. And people got riled up and started to mobilize, and they started to go to town hall meetings. They started to cause trouble and push back against their elected officials in their communities. We're starting to see something similar. 10 days after the People's March, there was the federal freeze, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we've seen a lot of similar pushback as we did to the travel ban since then. We did not have a Women's March. We did not have that big day in the streets. Although, to be honest, the point of those types of big days in the street are all about giving people a sense to have a collective grieving, a collective moment of identity formation. I don't know that we need that this time around, to be honest with you. The thing that I'm really afraid of is that a lot of people are feeling so personally attacked because they have, trans kids who are losing their gender affirming medicine, because they are being, fired from the federal government, because, all of these different policies are being pushed back. Because they work in DEI, right?
Yeah.
The list goes on and on.
Or they're a person of color who works for an organization that suddenly had its DEI department axed.
Right. Or they're a recent arrival in the United States who came here because, we're supposed to be this great melting pot. And instead, even though they have citizenship, they're being told that they are basically not having their citizenship honored. How about that one? Yeah. Or they have family members. I have so many people I know who have family members who they're worried are going to be deported.
Yeah.
All of these people are terrified.
I think local indivisible groups are full of people that are dyed-in-the-wool Democrats who hate the Republican Party, which I think is a key source of people that are actually radicalizable. This is what they want. They're the Sam Cedar people, basically. I think the best way to understand indivisible people is they're basically Sam Cedars, in the sense that they want to beat the Republicans. So they only want to hear things that will beat the Republicans. There might even be really progressive on every policy, but the thing that they care about the most is defeating Republicans. So if you can't explain to them how you're going to not immediately defeat Republicans, then they don't want to hear it. That's the reality. So how do you use that as a left winger? Well, you need to show that you are actually the best bet of fighting the Republicans and opposing the Republicans. The centrists are going to fight against you by saying that, yes, I hate the Republicans too, but we need to appeal to the middle because otherwise we'll lose. That's always the debate that goes on. And whether these people believe those centrist lies or not, pretty much tells you what the outcome of that election is going to be. If people believe that they have to go to the right to defeat the Republicans, they're going to go to the right to defeat Republicans. If they believe the candidate is actually a supporter of the Republicans, they will probably go against him. But they are the most dupable and manipulatable people because their only goal is defeating Republicans and they don't care about anything else, truly. And that's why they're so hard to actually get on our team.
Right. And all of them are being affected in ways that are really different from 2017. And I think that what we're going to see is people working together in a really different way. But one of the things that my research has shown is that it's not necessarily going to be peaceful. And it's certainly not going to be electorally focused like last time around. Because last time around, the resistance really held the line and was like, it's all about the elections. It's all about the blue wave, right? Well, we got a blue wave. And then we got Joe Biden. And here we are again. So it's not like it was a mistake that Trump won the first time around. It was just, it was a warning.
Yeah.
And we didn't really heed the warning as well as we should have. So now this is a bigger warning.
But it still feels that the response, I mean, if you're saying that the protests that we're having now are, hey, they're sizable, the Women's March was successful to some degree. I mean, but it still brought us to this point. Like, why would we think that the amount of protest and resistance that we're seeing now would be any more effective than what happened in 2017?
Oh, no, I'm saying that this is just the beginning. I think we are, but I'm saying that there are people who are already protesting. I think that we are going to see floods of people in the streets. And I also think that we're going to see mass strikes, which is really what we need, right? I mean, because the only way to push that back against authoritarianism is like pushing back with power of people or pushing back with violence. And, you know, I'm really hoping we're not going to see violence. But I mean, one of the things that I did at the People's March is I surveyed the people in the streets and I asked them about their perspectives on political violence. And surprisingly enough, in contrast to data that I had collected right before the election, a third of the people at the People's March, and this was like nice middle-aged women with their pussy hats on. Some of them had like American flag hats.
They're still wearing pussy hats?
Oh, they are. They had some of them brushed them up.
You know, God bless them. Yeah. Like, I'm not a downer on the pussy hat. It's cute. It's nice. What's our problem with the pussy hat?
I mean, I was quoted in the Washington Post as saying, we don't need another pussy hat back in 2018. So like people think of me as a pussy hat hater. I don't hate them. I think that they're part of collective identity formation. And actually, I loved seeing them in the streets. You know,
I saw someone tweet something like, we need to get over disliking the protests of others because they're cringe. Yeah. Like, it's okay for them to be you need to build political coalition with people who make you cringe.
Oh, you
just because someone's older than you and a little more square, they're not quite hip, they're wearing a dorky hat, you know, they're wearing a t-shirt. Like, let's still find political, you know, solidarity with them. For the love of God.
By the way, I'm totally on board with that point, but the problem that we have here is that you have to have a vision. I don't care if somebody's cringe or old or whatever the fuck. I don't care if someone is earnest. I don't care. However, discipline is good. Optics are important. Aesthetics matter. So there has to be a balance between the different factors here. And the one thing that fascists understand is that aesthetics matter.
Be solidarity for sure. I mean, and there were a lot of women who had basically knitted these, they did the same pussy design in red, white, and blue. And they're like, this is American. Resistance is American. And I was like, you know what, ladies? I love it, right? So that was great to see. But what I also asked these people, and these are like, you know, your middle-aged, you know, engaged people, most of them, and highly educated. And I asked them, you know, this question that we adapted from a national survey. And the question was, you know, to what degree do you agree or disagree with this statement? That political violence may be necessary to protect democracy. And a third of the people at the People's March said they agreed or strongly agreed with that statement, which is a huge shift from what we have seen. Back during the American Values Survey, the last time they fielded it, was only 8% of Democrats. And let me just say, at the People's March, it was 93% of the people in the crowds voted for Kamala Harris. So these are Democrats. Yeah. And they are starting to shift their opinion. So that's the thing I'm worried about. But I'm not saying we have enough people in the streets right now. I'm saying there are enough people who are starting to feel threatened that they're going to push back. And, you know, what we can hope for is they push back in a peaceful way, But one of the things that I would just say for anybody who's feeling like they're alone and they're only one under attack, they need to look to their left and look to their right, because so many people are feeling isolated and afraid right now. And like we talked about last time, the best thing you can do in that moment is get angry.
Yeah.
Because anger helps to unify our energy and help us to think through how we push back.
But get angry with other people. Don't get angry by yourself.
Right,
scrolling.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, or you turn into Luigi, and that's not that we don't. Nobody wants that.
Well,
let's just
some people do want that. I mean, you're talking about the rise of political violence in America, and like, that killing was an act of political violence. It was explicitly political assassination.
Well, I mean, and at the People's March, I can't tell you how many signs, pink glitter signs that said "Free Luigi" did we see in the crowd.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about this: like, Luigi has not been convicted. All right. The only evidence that we have right now that is definitive was that he was at a hostel in New York City. Like, that's, okay, he was in the city. But there's a grainy video where the person who did the shooting is covered up. We don't have definitive evidence that he did it, okay? He didn't confess. He says he's not guilty. So personally, I think those people are saying free Luigi because they don't think he did it. The evidence isn't strong enough for them. And we'll wait and see what happens at trial. I don't think that's so unreasonable to expect.
It's really surprising. I mean, I did not expect that, right? I expected the hats. I figured the hats would be back. But,
you should have expected the free Luigi signs. I mean, the man became a folk hero I mean, the comments of this video are going to be like, "I love Luigi. Feel free to literally, like, if
you can give money to him now. Apparently, he is taking donations while he's in jail.
I mean, that says so much about the mood in America, and that's not a mood I'm going to contradict. That's people's actual feeling, right? Yeah. But what do you credit to, average folks saying, political violence might be necessary on a large scale? Why would that shift happen?
I think it's happening because people don't believe in the elections anymore. I mean, first of all, I think that during the first Trump administration, lots of people were feeling really uncomfortable. And there were all these discussions in the media. Oh, why aren't people having a general strike? Why aren't people getting violent in the streets? I mean, it was like Matt Iglesias was saying it. Michelle Goldberg at the New York Times was saying it. And, I was the person who was like collecting the data in the street. So I always was called to say, what do you think, Dana? And I was like, well, I think that people are really like laser focused on the elections. Well, we have now a person in the White House who said that the last election in 2024 was the last election that anybody had to vote in, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that kind of our democratic elections are, fraught. And we know a lot of people are losing their jobs. And
first of all, the first thing to know is they're not democratic, right? So that's number one. We have an electoral college system that is undemocratic, right? We have a Senate system that's undemocratic. We have a party system that's undemocratic. Like, we literally just had a Democratic nominee that got 0 primary votes. So in what way is it democratic? Well, you get to vote. That doesn't mean it's democratic.
And losing their livelihoods, and the idea that they're going to be like, oh, I'll just wait until 2026. It'll all be okay. I can just hold my breath. My kids don't need to eat till then. That's like unfathomable. So this shift towards violence makes sense because we know from research that when people feel like they have no other choice, that's when they get violent. That's when they get aggressive. That's when they get really confrontational. What my hope is that people choose like a more confrontational but peaceful option. Nonviolent civil disobedience. Let's give it all a try. Let's go there first, right? But there are a lot of guns in our country, and that's concern-worthy.
You're making me think about how, the Women's March was in the wake of Barack Obama's presidency. Like, I think it's really almost hard to remember what it was like to live under Barack Obama for 8 years. And the sort of encompassing ideology of the time among Democrats was, hey, democracy works. Mm-hmm. We elected this guy. America elected a black president for the first time. We
were a post-racial society. Remember, we were post-racial.
Yeah. That was that was busted very early in his presidency. But that was the vibe, right? America's getting better. The long arc of history bends towards justice. Mm-hmm. All of that. And then Donald Trump is elected, and it seems like a violation of those principles. How could this happen?
Right.
And that, to me, is what sent people into the streets. Was the sort of rupture of it. Now, why was he elected? It was because a bunch of the country didn't feel that the system was, they're like, democracy fucking sucks. I don't like it. I want this authoritarian figure, right? But now, 8 years after he was elected for the first time, now that he's been elected a second time, I think maybe Democrats are starting to feel, or liberals or leftists, or that, and everybody, left of
Moderate
center.
and to the left.
Yeah, exactly. Is starting to feel like, hold on, the system brought us this.
I honestly think, and I mean this very completely, is if you say stuff like they just said, like moderate and people further to the left, your political analysis has already become fatally flawed, because you are assuming that everybody is sitting there in a firm ideological position that they hold because of rational, articulatable reasons. That is not true. I want you to understand that is not correct. All right? 90% of people are unideological. I will say that again. 90% of people cannot define or explain their coherent political ideology. This is a political science fact. All right? This is probably the most important political science fact you're ever going to learn. Now, does that mean that people don't have political opinions? No, they do. This is what we so kindly call idiosyncratic opinion. What does that mean? It means they pulled it out of their fucking ass. Somebody said something that they thought sounded good at some point, and they went along with it. Most political discussions are basically having a political discussion with a random number generator combined with Chat GPT. People are voting based on their identities. And being a Democrat is one of their more important identities. Or being a Republican is an important identity, right? They're not voting based on some sort of coherent ideological project. You might do that. Most people are not. This is very important to understand. It's very important to understand this. And the moment you understand this, now you can start talking about politics and electoral politics in a coherent fashion, which is people vote with their hearts, not their heads. Sometimes their hearts are boiling over with rage. Sometimes their hearts are boiling with love. But they vote with their hearts, not their heads. Stop talking like they're voting with their heads. Now, does that mean you shouldn't have policies? No. Actually, on the contrary, having a strong platform and program gets you the ideological core of your movement of people that are fired up. That 10% is the core of your movement. The 10% of people that actually have an ideological core, the more you get those people fired up, the more soldiers you have, the more the vibes are up, the more the energy is up. So, and then people will hear a thing. They see that passionate energy. They see that intensity. They see that vision, and they jump on the bandwagon. That's what makes people want to fight for a cause. And this is why Donald Trump is winning, because that's what he gave the right. And anybody who was sympathetic to any of the schlock he was selling jumped on the bandwagon. He didn't do it by appealing to Democrats. He didn't do it by appealing to unity. He did it the opposite, which is passionate intensity. And that's why Barack Obama won. Passionate intensity. Now, it was all bullshit, just like it is with Trump, but people believed in change. They had a what I would consider an intellectual romance with Obama. The vibes were up. The passion was up. I don't mean it sexual. I mean it in the sense of this mystical yearning. for the America they imagined that that Barack Obama winning would create, which is this post-racial, empathetic togetherness. And it was, you know, it was ad libs. You wrote in what policies you thought might achieve that in your own mind. This is, and like, so many people are thinking like, oh, there are moderates and moderates have moderate takes. No, they don't. No, they don't. No, they fucking don't. Just because someone identifies as moderate doesn't mean they're a centrist on policies. It doesn't mean that. It never has, and it never will. But yet so many people make errors because they continually are committed to this idea that moderate equals moderate on policy. It is not the case. And I just don't understand, like, and I don't know how people can study and think about politics seriously and for an extended period of time and not know this information. Mike, my introduction to you was the Project Veritas tricked you, showed up with you to meet AOC. That's not what happened. What happened was I went to do canvassing operations with Nina Turner. And AOC is a mutual of mine, and she was there. So I wanted to go and meet with her and have a quick conversation. And then there was a guy with a Black Lives Matter shirt, and he said, oh, are you going to meet AOC? I said, yeah, she's out here in the parking lot. That's it. That's literally it. Then he tried to go like, I'm with Project Veritas, and we all laughed at him. And I heckled him, and then his AOC staff was like, don't even heckle him, just ignore him. So I was like, okay. And he failed, and she laughed at him, and he walked away, and he posted a video that had like 100 views. And so I laughed about how much of a failure he was. And then I interviewed AOC talking about The video is extremely prescient, by the way. It's from 2020 or something. And it's me talking about how AIPAC and the Israeli lobby is targeting progressives and how it's going to get worse in the future. And I was dead fucking right. And I laughed about that on my stream, and the million hate watchers, the 5 to 10 hate watchers from Destiny's community saw that and went, look, Mike tricked her and brought Project Veritas over with AOC, and he got so tricked. And it's like, that never happened, and nobody cares. The only people that have ever seen that video are literally Destiny fans trying to come up with some excuse for why I'm bad. It's one of the most pathetic fucking things I've ever seen in my life. They help boost a Project Veritas video just to try to own me. Just like right now, they're working with Elon Musk to go after Hassan because they don't care about anything. They don't care about politics or policies. They're fucking losers. It's your fault because the guy couldn't have been able to figure out the elevator on his own. Yeah. Being nice to a guy in person means that I'm a bad guy. I should have been like the average Destiny canvasser and sexually harassed every woman. Do you think we should create a completely new party? I don't know, man. I don't know. I think we should personally, but
you could structure it. You just, I'm gonna go.
If you're trying to do buybacks based on information that's like not publicly available, that would be considered insider trading.
He's a fucking moron. He's a complete fucking moron. This has been extensively studied. You schedule the trades publicly, and you also have buybacks. That's not inside information, but it is causes a short-term spike. He's stupid. He's fucking stupid. How is he still confused? Directors sell more shares after buyback announcement. The company says buy, but insiders sell. Buybacks. In a 2017 to 2018 study, SEC researchers found that insiders were twice as likely to sell on the days following buyback announcements as they were in the days leading up to the announcements. The average sale was also 5 times larger than before the announcement at about 500,000. Hey, Destiny, you're fucking stupid. You're stupid. You're a stupid fuckhead. Keep studying, sex pest.
But there's a whole other list of rules and regulations, everything around what's considered insider trading or not. And we're in the Trump administration, so maybe there's maybe there's not. Maybe we don't do insider trading anymore. There are so many levels of argument right now because everything about it, what he's saying is just so stupid. Also, like the idea that you could either do stock buybacks or reinvest in your company. There's not always good investments to make in your company. Insofar as there is a...
Again, he finally approached it and he's still getting it wrong. He's still getting it wrong. The point is, you dumb ass, that stock buybacks create an adverse interest between the director and the company, where there are marginal investments that may be profitable for the company long term. They will get you less return than just buying back stock now and locking it in, which leads to a bias in favor of more buybacks for more executive compensation and less investing in marginal investments, which results economy-wide in increased income inequality and less research and development because you've created a adverse agent interest. I can't make it any simpler than that. And this is not my opinion. This is basically a major front of economic research backed up by many academics, many regulatory agencies. This is basic shit. I'm sorry you're stupid. I don't know how else to explain it to you. You uneducated sexual pest.
Better investment to make than just doing a stock buyback, then you would do the investment of the company. But that's what you would expect any business to do. That's what the shareholders would want the business to do. The idea that you're doing buybacks instead of doing profitable investments is retarded. Shareholders wouldn't want you to do that. Big wig CEOs wouldn't want you to do that.
This is why he's stupid, because like legitimately he's low IQ. There's nothing more to say. He's low IQ. The answer is executives have an interest for immediate returns, not long-term investments. If you invest in, say, a drug, that could take a decade to come to market. Are you going to be at the company in a decade? So all you have now is a big R&D expenditure. And maybe in the future it returns. Or you can buy the stock back right now.
Owners wouldn't want you, like nobody would want you to do that. They say, oh no, reinvest in the company.
In fact, he's so stupid. There is an entire drug company that does zero R&D. None. Zero. One of the major drug companies does zero R&D. Zero R&D. In fact, it was a Wall Street darling because they would be like, oh, they're not wasting any money on R&D. You know what they would do? They would go and they would buy out small companies that developed the drug. And then they would raise prices on the drug during the patent period. That was their entire drug company strategy. Again, he doesn't know anything about dick. And this motherfucker has people who watch him. It's crazy.
Yes, you can.
Oh my god, it's just the most...
Oh my god. Do you know how it works?
I guess I don't, Mike. When these people sell their capital, eventually they will pay taxes on it. But again, if you want to talk
Why
about...
would they sell? Why would they sell? You borrow against the value of your shares.
Yeah, it is both stock buybacks and buy, borrow, or die. He doesn't know. These are super basic, super basic concepts, right? I've talked about them extensively.
Super basic concepts. I didn't know about the whole borrowing against your investments to never realize gains or whatever. I didn't know about that whole scheme at the time. But that has nothing to do with stock buybacks versus paying dividends versus anything else. Like,
You still don't get it. Stock buybacks run up the price of the shares, which increases the value of the shares, which means the shares are worth more, which means you have more money, and then you borrow against the value of your shares instead of paying taxes. But if you got dividends paid, that would be a taxable event. So the stock buyback hurts the company and it hurts society, because it hurts the company by incentivizing stock buybacks and lowering the cash on the balance sheet instead of making productive investments in the economy. And it hurts taxation because the stock's rising in value doesn't result in a taxable event, but gives you more income via borrowing. So it hurts the country on the side of you don't pay any fucking taxes, and it hurts the country on the side of the company is not making as much investments. It is completely relevant. You're stupid.
He doesn't know. These are super basic, super basic concepts. Right?
They're getting this take from Sam Cedar. He says buybacks are manipulative. He probably does.
Right?
Yeah, I'm getting this from Sam Cedar. I'm getting this from Sam Cedar. I'm getting it from a 2017 study that I knew about from the SEC. This isn't Sam Cedar. This is the Securities and Exchange Commission. Stock buybacks and corporate cash outs, which, by the way, was in 2018, which is why I knew about it when I debated Destiny in 2019. I don't know why he's so confused about this. He's still trying to pretend he didn't lose this debate.
I've talked about them extensively a million times over. He doesn't know, but it's okay. Normally, if you don't know something, what you're supposed to do is be like, I don't really know this. Can you explain it to me? What he does is dominate. He wants to dominate the conversation. So while he's talking to someone that knows better than he...
Why would a company do stock buybacks actually? Just to decrease their net profits and pay less in taxes? It's a way of giving money back to your investors. Let's say that you made a fuck ton of money last year, but you don't really have any good projects to invest it in. Well, instead of just sitting on a bunch of cash, you want people to invest in your company, so you pay it back to your shareholders. So you could either pay a dividend to everybody that owns some of your stock, or you could go to the market and you could buy up some of your stock, and by buying some of the stock and removing the stock from the market, it increases the value of the rest of the stock, right? Because I believe that when a company buys shares, I think that the shares are retired or whatever. So if there's 100 shares on the market and I buy 50 of them and then I retire those shares, the 50 remaining double in value, basically. You're returning money to the people.
That's actually not true, because he doesn't understand. Again, he doesn't understand this, and this is like a rudimentary 8th grade level understanding. Actually, what happens when you burn cash off the balance sheet, it makes the value per share, the assets per share, go down. So you're actually hurting the company a little bit. So it doesn't double in value, because the value of a company is partially derived on the book value of the assets. And when you buy stock, you're basically burning money. So this is not totally right. It does increase the value of the shares by reducing the float. He's right about that, but it doesn't double because book value goes down. So again, it's bad for the company. And also, you're not returning money to the investors because you're buying shares, thereby turning people from investors into the company to strangers. Do you understand? So you're actually only returning money to the investors if they do what I said you said they couldn't do, which is borrow against the value of their shares, right? They don't actually get the value unless they take advantage of it by using buy, borrow, die, which you didn't know about.
He does, okay, that knows more about this. And by the way, ironically enough, he's also undermining the head of the SEC's the head of the SEC agreeing with AOC in that congressional hearing, okay? But the reason why I think this is important to understand, like, in terms of his style and how he presents himself to an audience, and like why his audience in a cultish way think he's true.
Wait, did I miss the part where Hassan showed Destiny doesn't know what he's talking about in terms of his own knowledge on the issue? No, he's just like linking like headlines. One had to do with buy, borrow, die, which has nothing to do with stock buybacks and nothing to do with dividends. So I don't know why he linked this at all. But
really brilliant is because when he doesn't know something,
you know a lot about stock buybacks, but you didn't know about borrowing against your assets, which I just explained. It does matter. God, he's stupid.
Angry in a very confident manner, and before you say, "Oh, you do that too, dog,"
Is there an issue with mass stock buybacks and that they overcommit the company, sometimes taking out loans to do the buyback? I remember people saying many companies were over leveraged on debt from it for COVID. Could you? I mean, could you do that? If you thought your company was insanely undervalued,
like this is kind of this is how Destiny works, right? Which is, and this is why he thinks he's smart. Like this is why he legitimately thinks he's smart. And this is why he's Dunning-Kruger, right? Which is, this is just a factual question. This is not something that you just like sit back and think and you come up with the right answer. The answer is, so the first, by the way, it shouldn't take you this long to figure out. Can you borrow money and then spend that money? Yes. So right off the bat, unless there's a regulation prohibiting you from doing the action, you can do the action. So can you have bonds on your, so in other words, can you borrow money as a company and buy back your stock with your company? The answer is, of course you can. Of course you can.
Could you borrow money if interest rates were favorable enough to do a stock buyback? Maybe you could. I don't know, actually. That sounds like a very, I feel like it could be risky. I don't know if you're allowed to do that. I don't know if companies do that. I don't see a reason why that would be impossible. That sounds like a very spooky gamble, though. But I guess you could do that. But I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know about that.
Literally will immediately say, oh, I didn't know that. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. There are probably 700,000 examples of this, okay? I'm wrong all the time. Like, the thing I hate about that, as a matter of fact, is when I say something and I'm wrong and I get corrected, and I say, oh, I'm wrong, my bad, people
GE shows why stock buybacks aren't always as good as dividends. Now that General Electric might begin buying back stock again, it's more sign the company has repaired its balance sheet. It's also a reminder that dividends and stock buybacks are two different things. The conglomerate said on Tuesday the board authorized spending $3 billion on buybacks. That gives the company the ability to repurchase shares if management chooses. GE has been out of the buyback game for a while for good reason. A legacy of poorly timed acquisitions and stock buybacks left the company with too much debt. So it had to use the cash it generated to pay that down instead of sending it back to shareholders. GE used to be a big buyer of its own stock between 2012 and 2017. The company spent roughly $32 billion to repurchase its shares, net of any cash coming in from stock issuance. BE share count dropped by roughly 235 million shares over that span. GE was purchasing a lot of stock back when shares were north of $230. Calculations aren't perfect or easy, but GE's average purchase price was likely above $200 a share. GE shares are about $93 today, so the company clearly overpaid for its own stock. All that money was going out the door or into the stock, even though the company had an enormous burden of debt. Coming up with the exact number is difficult because much of it was linked to GE Capital, the industrial business's vast finance arm, which borrowed money to lend consumers to buy its turbines, engines, and other products, among other operations. Starting around 2018, new management at GE decided to tackle that debt load. So, like, they were literally buying back their stock as they had massive debt. He's actually very fucking stupid. All right, I'm done with that. He's too stupid.
Semi-legitimately or legitimately, right? Like people
popular
fucking
vote, right?
Yeah, it was like it happened, you know. And so that means the system doesn't work, right? That means there's something wrong with the system. And by the way, there are plenty of things that are wrong with the system. If you look at the fact that Trump is seizing all this power from Congress and Congress is doing nothing to stop it.
Right. They've gone performatively to a bunch of doorways of agencies and been refused entry and have done nothing.
Yeah, well, and that's the Democrats, right?
Yeah.
But
that's congressional Democrats.
But the idea of the Constitution was that a president who was trying to grab power would be stopped by a Congress that's jealous of its power. That was like literally the idea.
Yeah.
Oh, even if you're in our party, we don't want you to do those things because this is Congress's power, to the purse strings and all that. And Congress has abdicated that power because partisan politics has become more important than that structure. And that's a way that the system is just like affirmatively broken. So I can see why, formerly milquetoast liberals who are like, no, yes, I listen to crooked media and I vote and, we'll solve it through this and believe in American democracy, are now like, hey, man, fuck that. It didn't really seem to work. We gave it a shot. Pod didn't save America. No offense to John Lovett, who throws wonderful parties and is a nice man, and I've been on their shows before and whatever. But we didn't. It didn't fucking work, right? Here we are, and so maybe there's a little bit of that energy coming out.
Well, I think that there's absolutely that energy. I think there's also a lot of people who are sick of. For example, Pod Save America blamed the left for the success of Donald Trump in the last election.
Did they?
Oh yeah, they did, and a lot of people, by the way, are annoyed with them about that right now. But we won't. We won't go there. But
we can go wherever you want. It's fine. We can start a beef that does good on YouTube. Yeah, fuck your parties, John Lovett. Fuck you, man. That's all right. It's all good. But I mean, we'll do a little theatrical battle here.
but anyway,
hit me.
You know, but so the deal is that I think a lot of people who are more left leaning and more progressive are just sick of being blamed and being told that it's because we want to have more progressive policies. We want to have more social like security in our country. And the idea that now no social security is even safe, right? Yeah. And the Democrats and those checks and balances that are supposed to protect everybody, like bullshit, right? It's like it's basically smoke and mirrors. So I think that there are a lot of people who are completely disillusioned with what they expected America to be. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have to say that I feel that way. I mean, and I study it, and it's just like, I mean, I have been out in the streets, so many protests, collecting so much data. And I originally, when I got those data and I saw how many people were like, political violence may be necessary. I mean, and it was interesting because it was like a lot of folks who were LGBTQIA who were in the crowd. And there were a lot of people there were these counter protesters who came to the People's March in Washington, D.C., all mogged up. They were there for the inauguration. They're like, oh, let's go heckle people before we go and celebrate, right? And they were like, you know what? We are going to fuck them up if they come near our stage, right? And it was like a really different vibe than I'm sure you felt at the Women's March back in 2017. That was not the vibe. I mean, we were all like, oh, look, it's Madonna, you know?
Israel stood still and held a sign. We all made nice signs.
Exactly, nice signs. But like, I think that there are a lot of people who do not think that making a nice sign, even if it's got pink glitter, is going to be enough, right? I mean, and I think that the truth is it never was enough.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the unfortunate truth. It's not enough just to go out and vote, even every 2 years. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just not really enough. I mean, and there's not a lot of solidarity for the people who have been suffering and having to push back more consistently. I mean, and that is one of the things that I've written about a lot in my work. And, I talk about that a bunch in Saving Ourselves in terms of thinking about building solidarity around climate and around justice and equity and labor and all of that. I think that message is even more necessary now than it was when I wrote the book, because solidarity is going to be necessary to get us through this.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, or we just like put our hands up, but this is not like one of those benign like autocrats, right? I think everybody should know that by now, right?
First, they vote for more sponsors, Supremacy 1940.
A lot of people are just going to lose everything. And we need to figure out how we're going to support that.
A lot of people already have.
Yeah. Support them, not that. Like we have to support the people who are losing things and figure out how to push back. I mean, and I just don't think that like taking a Saturday when, everybody's off work anyway, making a pretty sign and maybe marching and chanting, maybe knitting a hat, that's not enough. But I think a lot of people recognize that. And it's a little scary because what comes next, I mean, we know if you think about history, what comes next when that kind of stuff doesn't work and democracy doesn't work for you, it can be dark, but it also can be really like reaffirming solidarity and thinking through how we get to the other side, which is what we need right now. We need to get to the other side here and we need to do it together. You cannot do it alone, and you can't do.
The thing that I think my main disagreement with them is based on the idea of revolutionary intent is not evidencing to me. And like, do you guys really think the United States Constitution is like legitimately a good constitution at this point? Like constitutional, we need to rip it up. Like it's time for it to go in the museum, like the Articles of Confederation. If you want to keep your stupid fucking states, fine. But we don't need to have a Senate. We don't need to have an electoral college. You want to have a presidential fucking thing? Fine. We'll have a president, and that president needs to have it needs to have a majority of the votes to win. We'll have multiple rounds. We'll do a runoff. We're not going to do a thing where we, like the political system we have now is non-functional. And I don't think, I'm not hearing any of this kind of stuff. And it's common sense.
Do it like this. I keep telling my students, like, you put down your thumb. Yeah. That's my scrolling image, right?
Yeah.
Put down the phone, start talking to your friends and neighbors.
Yeah. Posting is not activism is a really hard thing to remember. I've spent as much time as anybody like locked on my back, like scrolling, retweeting. This is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares what you tweet.
Well, I mean, you do it in your echo chamber, right? So those people are like, yeah, Adam, go. But like, we need to get out and we need to build bridges, right? And you can't build bridges in your little silos.
Folks, this week's episode is sponsored.
I think the main problem, I agree with that completely, and I've been considering that. I've been considering that. Like, obviously, you grow your silo as much as you want, but my main issue is I don't agree that with just this mindless Popular Front idea, it was tried after 2016, and it led to liberal co-option. And I think for me, preventing liberal co-option is just as important as, standing up to the right, because they make it impossible.
Do you think that political violence has like any efficacy for change? Like you're out there and you're asking people, what is your opinion of political violence? And they say it might be necessary. My other question is, the right uses political violence constantly and did even during Donald Trump's presidency. I mean, there was Charlottesville attack on the, on the counter protesters there, right? And during the Unite the Right rally, and the January 6th, like that's political violence.
Kyle Rittenhouse, remember Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yeah, absolutely. Who went out to murder protesters.
And he got off.
It seems like one side might have the monopoly on political violence, especially.
And it seems like they're winning. Odd. Like, political violence is so counterproductive. How come the right wing is winning? If political violence is so counterproductive, why is Erdogan winning? If political violence is so counterproductive, why are the fascists in Germany winning right after one of their members, drives over a bunch of people? The political violence is not effective. Like, so this is not I'm not advocating for it, by the way. I'm just saying that the idea that in and of itself it is always ineffective is like obviously silly. Like, America was founded on political violence. What do you think we celebrate on the 4th of July? Why do you think we have explosions in the air? Why do you think our national anthem is about a battle? It's political violence.
When that side, now controls the military and
they control everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, right? So I think, so I would just say with regard to political violence so historically we have seen, and when I say historically, I mean like before the election, my data showed, and other people who have studied this showed that the people who are most likely to support political violence were right-leaning.
Mm-hmm.
They were young, they were male, they were less educated. And this is something that I thought was interesting. And they had participated in protests. But when we say protests, they had participated in things like Unite the Right, right? These kinds of right-leaning protests.
Yeah.
So what we see now since the election, and this is the data I have are from before the January 6ers were pardoned, right? Before Trump basically fired all these people. They call it now Bloody Thursday, but it's really like Bloody Thursday, Bloody Friday. It's continued through the weekend. People in the federal government are being laid off in like by the more than dozens, like hundreds, thousands even, right? But so before that, at the time of the People's March, we found that the people who are most likely to support political violence, all of a sudden, they continue to be less educated. They continue to be younger. Gender no longer really was an issue in terms of like saying more male, more likely to support violence. And they were the most left-leaning, right? Which is kind of what we saw with those folks who were the Antifa back in the day.
Sure.
But I think that section of the left is growing. And it's very likely to continue growing. I have some colleagues that I work with quite closely in the federal government. Well, they are right now, but many of them.
Oh, so she's a Fed. Okay, cool.
Them believe they'll be losing their jobs within the next few weeks, if not
God, I hope so.
Next week. And many of them were telling me, as I was talking to them in the past week, they were saying, you should check out the federal Reddit. There's a subreddit just for federal workers.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, many of whom served in the military, right? These are people who were in the military who had a fast lane into the federal government to work there.
Yeah.
They're like, I have a gun and I know how to protect democracy because that's what I used to do for other countries, but maybe I need to do it here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's chilling, the language that's going on there.
Yeah.
But if we do not take that seriously, I mean, this is one of the things that I talked about in my TED Talk around saving ourselves. If we do not face reality of where we are right now, so many of us are going to be caught off guard that we will not be prepared for what's coming. So I think that the biggest thing we need to do right now is we need to be prepared with regard to the climate crisis. We need to be prepared with this polycrisis of the crisis of democracy in America and recognize it. And don't just be like, okay, I mean, the 2026 election is coming. Sure. I mean, I just got a text from Barack Obama just last week saying, give me money and that'll fix everything. Those text messages drive me crazy.
Yeah. And by the way, it's not Barack Obama. It's some fucking
I know.
fundraiser hired by a fundraiser using a photo, but it's part of the political system.
Oh, yeah. I wrote a book about that one, too. I mean, I mean, it is. But, the idea that we have people who are political leaders in our country who are still letting that process happen, that instrumental process that is supposed to protect our democracy, which is absolutely unfucking enough.
People get those texts and they feel insulted at this point. Like,
and angry, right?
You're asking me for money, like why? For what?
Yeah,
I gave you
how
money
about
last time, motherfucker?
I just lost my job, and you want me to give you money because the election is going to save us?
Yeah.
How dare you?
Because you think that money is going to do anything? I mean, sure, Elon Musk spent a lot of money, but like Kamala spent so much money. It was completely to put an ad on the side of the Sphere in Las Vegas. Like it just said Harris Walls on the side of the Sphere. People looked at that and went, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll vote for it." It says Harris Walls on the side of the Sphere. That's cool. They put it on a big sphere. Yeah, okay. No, I guess that'll help make my life better if I vote for her. Like, what the fuck is the money even for?
I know. I mean, the other thing though, I think, is that the left, and I've written like 3 books on this subject, but it gets worse and worse. But one of the things that the left has historically done is they really consider voters as these instrumental cogs in the process of democracy, rather than actually thinking through, like, engaging and embracing people on the left, which is this.
Well, of course. Why would you? Everybody's an individual. Everybody can be broken down by an algorithmic score. We know exactly where everybody is because we have a tracker on their phone. Why the fuck would you talk to them as a collective? Why would you make promises when you can hyper target their anxieties with a direct ad on their phone? Why treat them like a fucking human?
It's real.
By the way, chat, I just realized something. We are 3 hours and 30 minutes into the stream. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting it by subscribing at tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 sub. If you have Amazon Prime, you can attach that to your Twitch account. You get 1 free sub a month. That's your Twitch Prime sub. We are currently sitting at 6878 on the sub count. 6878 on the sub count. Not bad. Dropped a little bit. Maybe I should lower my goal. Maybe I should lower my goal a bit. Oh my God. We just had 100 bomb. Maybe I shouldn't lower my goal. Maybe I shouldn't lower my goal. Holy fucking shit. How do you say your name? How do you say your name? I'm illiterate. I learned whole language reading style. I'm sorry, chat. I don't know how to say this. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's just a bunch of vowels and an X. Zuai? I don't know how. Thank you so much for the 100 gifted subs. Also, chat, I want to tell you something. It's very important that you pay for your own subscription. This is a really underestimated important thing to do. Is if you enjoy the stream, the best thing you can do is go down, hit subscribe, select tier 3, and then select 6 months, and then hit subscribe. That is the best way to support the stream. And then the thing is to make sure that your debit or credit card or PayPal that is attached to Twitch has an expiration date as far in the future as you can. So, if it's like 2032 expiration date, that's, be great. 2042, that would be even better. Honestly, I would try to make it something that never expires. Okay. And then just forget about it. Just forget about it. Don't think about it again. Anyway, chat, thank you so much for supporting the stream. It really does matter quite a bit. Can we get some bended knees for the 100 gifted subs? I don't feel like you guys are hyped enough. Why the fuck are you guys not hyping? Hype, get fucking hype. I see so many of you people that have had gifted subs for like 18 months in a row, and you're acting like you are entitled to it. Can you get some fucking hype in here? If you got gifted a sub, can you say thank you? The entitlement of you people. I'm hyped. I'm just working also. Thank you, Food Farmer. I don't know. If we could give as many gifted subs to these people. Have you even said thank you? We're gonna have to talk about I don't know if you care about peace. You're not saying thank you. Suki Saperstein, thank you for the 22 ones. Okay, I have to admit. All right, I'm gonna say my most right-wing coded opinion. My most right-wing coded opinion. Can you imagine being an Azov Battalion guy right now? Imagine being an Azov Battalion guy right now. Like you're an Azov Battalion guy, so you're a super Nazi, right? And you think like, I'm white, I'm part of the West. And then Donald Trump gets elected. You probably celebrated because you recognize him as a fellow white supremacist, racist, fascist. And then he's like, I'm going to give unlimited money to Israel. Israel gets everything they want, but Ukraine, you don't get anything. I'm stopping the aid. No more aid for you. Israel, everything. Azov Battalion, nothing. They're Nazis. Putin's right. Imagine being an Azov Battalion guy right now. That's kind of funny, a little bit, right? That's a little bit. Like when you have, my favorite thing about Ukrainian Nazis, they're like Clandis Owens, the non-white white supremacists, right? Like a lot of Slavic fascists think they're white because they watched enough American TV. We're like, in America, if you're a Pole or a Russian, you know, you're in the white club. But in like European racism, you ain't white. So a lot of these Ukrainians watched a lot of TV and convinced themselves they're white, right? And in reality, the old school Nazis, and at the time, like when Steven Bandera was trying to ally with the Nazis, they were like, no, bro, you're not white. You're Ukrainian. You're not white. He'd be like, please. He was so desperate to swear allegiance to Hitler. Steven Bandera was like, please, please. And Hitler just looked down at him and said, no, you're not white. They're like, but we helped you kill so many Jews. That's the Ukrainian nationalist that they declared a hero of the Ukraine. It's incredible how it's happening again. Gopnik said Ukrainian white status revoked. Trump to revoke legal status for 240,000. White status revoked. Just like the rich white gays are going to have their shit revoked. Did you guys see that the support for gay marriage has plummeted since the election? Did you guys see that? Did you guys see that? They went after trans people and a lot of gays helped. And then now immediately, surprise, surprise, they're going after the gays. Who could have believed it? White status revoked. Incredible.
Disconnect from the way that the right does it, right?
Anyway,
the right really goes where people...
Guys, gals, non-binary pals for all the support. Suki, Calm Like a Tom, all the people who drop subs. Thank you so much for subbing, resubbing. You guys are the best. I really do appreciate you all. Thank you for helping me hit the sub goal. We made it back over 7,000, which is a crazy, unsupportable number. Like, I have a daily sub goal of 100, and I think we have like smashed that goal for years at this point. Like, I think it's few and far between where we haven't gotten at least like 150, 200, if not more a day. I just use that as a motivator for myself to chill. That's it. But you guys and gals and non-binary pals have just been so supportive of the community. And I want to say this about trans people. I'm not going to waver on trans rights. Like, a lot of liberals are starting to waver. A lot of people are out there going, Andy Bashir is good on trans rights. Well, Andy Bashir came out and said he doesn't supporting gender affirming care for trans criminals. And that is one of the most cowardly things and I would call it genocidal positions, because trans people in prison, if they're not treated as legitimately their gender, they become one of the worst victims of sexual assault and rape in prison. It is a existential threat to every trans person, because anyone could be arrested. You don't have to actually have done anything to be arrested. There's a saying in the legal profession that I try to explain to people. You can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. There's a horrible thing called V-coding, which I don't want you to unless you feel that you could withstand the most horrifying thing you've ever heard in your life, I wouldn't even look it up. Let's just say it's a systemic abuse of trans people in prison. And so I'm going to stand with trans people. I'm not going to pretend Andy Bashir is a good guy because he vetoed some legislation and then his veto was immediately overridden. These people are not on our side, and we need to have higher standards. It is 2025. We're not voting for a single politician at the national level for over a year. And that's for the primary, okay? We need to stop. And I need you to stop trying to surrender to people. I need you to start looking and dreaming big. If you're out there looking for JB Pritzker or whoever else liberal fuck, you are the problem. I need you to be a socialist. I need you to be uncompromising. I need you to call for leadership. The on stream that Trump flipped on the Department of Education dismantling
are and tries to connect with them and makes them feel like their grievances are heard, whether or not they're actually going to rule in a way that actually supports.
I did a video about this. They actually organize, they have Moms for Liberty, the NRA, like these groups that you can join, and you can go to a meeting, and then you can go to a rally.
People, and then you can, they have like snacks, and sometimes they have potlucks.
And you can go, they'll be like, hey, at 4 p.m. we're going to go throw potatoes at some trans kids. You want to come? It's going to be fun. Then we're going to get beer.
Oh yeah.
And
everybody's going to adopt a voting like Dropbox, and they're going to sit there and heckle people of color if they try to submit a ballot, right? Stuff like that. Yeah, I know all about those. But like the thing is, on the left, instead, we have these Zoom calls. And it's like, oh, I was in a Zoom. Like all these famous people did Zoom.
I did one of those.
Yeah. I mean, and like, sure, okay, it's nice to feel like you got to participate in a Zoom. But the idea that is the same as like feeling the solidarity of like throwing potatoes with people or going to a potluck or like having somebody who's connected to your kid and your kid's school, or where you decide to like practice your religion, or one of those, like it's just really different, and it's not really embedded in community.
How much do you think, there's a little bit of a tangent, but how much do you think the liberal left problem has been caused by Zoom? Because we are the ones who like during the pandemic, right? The pandemic's very serious. We got to stay on Zoom. We can't go out, right? And then I just know a lot of people who never stopped being on Zoom all day. Like I'm still working from home. Every single thing I do is on Zoom. Liberals tend to be the ones who get mad when they are forced to return to their office. And I completely understand the reasons for that, commuting and childcare and all those sorts of things, right? But it is also important as part of human life to leave your house and be social connection and be in a room with other people, or even just walk down the street to be a social animal instead of an animal in your cave, to go be in the marketplace in public and make those real life connections. And just the idea of like, oh yeah, I just joined a Zoom link. I had my camera off, you know, and I just I watched
boxing
it.
Is also the worst, right?
Yeah.
I taught on Zoom and teaching the black boxes. We had a snowstorm, a freak snowstorm in DC last week. And so I had to teach on Zoom. And I was like, no, there will be no black boxes in here, because like there's nothing worse than talking about like what you're supposed to read and just staring at a screen with black boxes.
Yeah.
Right?
You need to be in a classroom or in a therapy session or in a union meeting. You kind of need to be trapped in there with the other people and with the subject matter. Everywhere you look, you're still in the classroom.
Right.
If you're in your house and it's like, oh, the entire thing is happening on one little screen.
Right. And you can turn it off and go get a drink or be like, yeah.
Or you just glance over there. There's my poster. There's my bookshelf. There's my other stuff. You know, it's like you're not forced to be engaged with the thing or forced to be engaged with other people. And plenty of good uses of that technology. But I feel like, you know, we've allowed ourselves to be atomized in this way.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned before, having to build solidarity across kind of, and sometimes with peoples who may make you uncomfortable, and trying to think about how to create those kinds of tenuous connections, right? And I think that we have seen increasingly the left rely on using those using these digital connectors when there are these tenuous connections to be built. I mean, and we saw it before Zoom. I mean, one of the things that I talked about before was like during previous campaigns where instead of trying to build real connections in communities that were like purple, what we ended up doing is importing people from blue states to go do that hard work, right? So you bring in strangers. But one of the things that we know is
this is actually a good point. Like the Democratic Party will take volunteers from, say, New York and drive them to Pennsylvania in buses to do the door knocking because they don't have the volunteers locally. And that was true of the Hillary Clinton campaign. You know what that wasn't true of? The Barack Obama campaign. They had enough volunteers in the purple state. That wasn't true of the Bernie campaign. They had enough volunteers in the red states. Is the Elon honeymoon starting to erode? Oh, yeah. Trump told the cabinet today they're in charge of their departments, not Elon Musk. Trump said that Musk can make recommendations, but not issue unilateral decisions on staffing and policy. Musk was also in the room. Okay. I need to short Tesla. Because the moment Donald Trump fires Musk, Tesla's going to drop 20% in a single day. It's going to be the greatest opportunity to make money. This is not financial advice. I'm just telling you what's going to happen. The moment that Elon Musk gets fired, the moment that Tesla will fall off a cliff. Is it already down 6.4%? No, I'm missing my chance! It's down so much. Why didn't I short? Why didn't I short Tesla? Oh my God, it's down so much. Oh my God. I said on election day it was such a fucking, that it was such stupid bubble and it's just crashing. Why didn't I short? I swear to God, I hate my executive dysfunction. I hate it so much. Like, it doesn't even matter though, because it can go a lot lower than this. But this, I missed so much. Oh my God, it fell so much. Holy shit, it fell so much. It's down 30% in the last month. That's so much. All of the Nvidia rebound is gone too. Oh my God. Wow, I wonder how much money he's lost. Finally, the Tesla turning point may be here. Rating upgrade. Tesla sales crash continues in Europe with Germany down 70% because he supported AFD. I need to short. This company's going to zero, dude. I think Teslas might actually go to zero. The Cybertruck plus everyone hating him. Elon might actually go broke. Maybe not like broke, but go from like richest man in the world to like a couple $1 billion of stuff he sold. And if Tesla goes low enough, then he'll lose Twitter as well. His other businesses are what? SpaceX? Didn't they just fail another launch? SpaceX launch canceled, or did it actually happen? Or okay, wait, it did happen? Okay, hold on. Oh, wait. Oh, it's later. It's later today. Okay, so they canceled it and they rescheduled. A Mexican billionaire canceled all contracts with Starlink. I am so mad I didn't short Tesla. I'm so mad I didn't short Tesla. I am an idiot. I would have made hundreds of thousands of dollars in like a month. What is wrong with me?
Yesterday, President Trump...
Oh, no, fuck you.
People go...
Okay, that's stupid.
Teachers cannot do the same work that friends and neighbors do, right? It doesn't work the same way. Knocking on some sort of random person's door or having some random person come to your door and be like, let me tell you who you should vote for. That doesn't work the same way.
I did that in the election, and I'm happy I did.
I don't think it works. I agree. You need long conversations and invitations to community. And I don't know how we do that anymore.
I'm happy I did what I could, but I also really saw the limits of me going to a working class neighborhood in a Phoenix suburb and knocking on people's doors. And I don't even speak the same language as many of the people whose doors I knocked versus now, by the way, I was doing it as part of an organization that was like a worker led organization that, had people from that community doing the same thing. So, it wasn't a waste of time, but like that as an overall strategy of, hey, let's pay door knockers, let's, run ads, all that sort of thing, rather than actually creating community infrastructure and bottom up infrastructure where the people who are in the communities are the ones telling you, the party, or you, the political organization, what the priority is.
Yeah, and telling you how to solve the problems that your community's feeling.
You're not a gambler. FOMO sucks, sure, but I feel like better mental health not to be constantly accepted with money markets. Oh no, definitely. I don't want to do day trading. I'm not saying I want to do day trading. It's just I see some opportunities that are clearly just there, which is like if the economy goes into recession, Tesla is going to zero. It's a fake company with no growth potential. You know what I mean? It's just done.
Choose your character.
These women have never played a video game in their life, except for AOC. This is the content I want to watch.
All right, today we're gonna try flippity flappies, swiggle wiggets, shit cake. All right, we're gonna let an American try it, see what they think. This was a fucking fan favorite in London. The Queen of England loved this before she fell down the fucking steps. All right, here we go. Let's take a little bit of a bite of that. Take a bite of that.
All right, here we go. Big bite, big bite. That tastes like fucking dog shit.
What?
Type shit.
What the fuck did you say?
I said it tastes like fucking dog shit.
Are you taking a piss? It's the best fucking piece of shit you'd have eaten. You fucking idiot. Are you taking a fucking piss?
This is the content I want to watch right now. British culture celebrated. Yeah, I'm gonna lie, I can't do it. I need to like, one of the things I'm most jealous about Hassan is his accents.
This country has, as you may know, this country has had some issues with race.
White people.
White people.
White people.
White people.
White people.
White people, I love you.
I'm white and 35.
is this an African-American woman or is that a Caucasian woman?
I would say that visibly she would be identified as white by people who see her.
What is a white person? Well, to be white means all slurs are funny.
People ask me, are you white? I say, it depends on the month, I guess.
Are you white?
Yeah, I would say so. You don't think so? When you look at me on YouTube, you don't think I'm a white guy?
Join famously wealthy YouTuber FD Signifier. I just had so much hope for the white race because of you. So to know that you're like cosplaying as a white guy, white fishing, it did hurt. As he navigates the white experience, you know, you got the vibes. You give off some of the vibes. It's not a compliment.
Yeah, is anti-white rhetoric real?
Yeah.
When I see comments of people saying, I'm white and I liked this video and stuff like that, I'm like, shut up, dude.
Surprisingly enough, he does this by.
Thank God I ain't white. I could say nigga. Nigga, yeah, I'm black. I could say nigga. Nigga, real nigga. Bitch nigga.
I think the one thing I would say about that trailer looks fun. A lot of cool people in it. One of the things I would say about that is white people invented that word. You know what I mean? Like, that's white people's word. That's why white people exist in the first place. They invented that word. And like, there's no non-cringe way to be white. That's inherently what whiteness is. Whiteness is being square. That's what it means. It means the status quo. It means inside the lines. It means you're in charge. It means you're the boss. That's what being white is. You can't be a cool white guy. Because whiteness is anti-cool. That's what it is. That's what people get so mad about. They want to be in power, but they don't want the exprobrium of being the boss. They don't want people to like hate them for being in charge, but they want to be in charge.
As I was saying, I was just out in Altadena, right? So Altadena was like devastated by wildfire. People in Altadena are going to have specific needs right now. And I know that there are a number of mutual aid organizations and other groups, like we saw World Central Kitchen and other good groups out there today.
Socialist vaccine.
But like the idea that somebody from some other state's going to come in and like just plop in there and be like, okay, let me help you. Okay, bye-bye. I'm going home. I mean, that never works. It never has worked. And the idea was that it used to be, well, the left had the numbers. So you didn't, you could just be like, okay, we get enough numbers. And they did that. That's how Barack Obama won. They did the math, right? But the math doesn't work anymore. And more importantly, the people on the left are just fed up with being like treated like a replaceable cog in this machine that is not working.
Yeah.
And that is where solidarity comes in, because until we build real solidarity, we're going to lose. And if we lose, well, everybody loses, really.
And you're not just talking about losing the election. You're talking about losing
democracy, losing, I mean, losing the planet. I mean, it's all, I mean, at this point, it's all on the line, right?
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate truth. But I mean, that's why I call myself the apocalyptic optimist, right? Because I believe that we're going to things need to get bad before they get better. I mean, and research shows us that we don't really build the kinds of bonds we need and do the work that's necessary to make the types of social change that we need until things get really bad. If you think about the Great Depression, that was the only time that people pushed back. And it stopped us from having like a shift to socialism in our country, which may or may not have been the best thing.
What stopped us from having a shift to socialism?
Because people kind of pushed back and, and FDR basically responded. And, that was when we had the New Deal, and the New Deal stopped that process.
Stop the process of the shift to socialism.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people...
we say that America is exceptional, right? That labor failed to get us all the way to socialism because we had this New Deal that rebuilt America better.
A lot of people at the time...
I don't agree with that, because I think America was just as likely to fall into fascism, if not more likely to fall into fascism, than it would be to fall into socialism at that time. And I think that's the reality. But you certainly, it's a hypothetical world, right? Like, who knows?
Called what FDR was doing socialism, and a lot of the
by the way, a lot of people in FDR's administration, even at the highest levels, thought they were going to, strangle capitalism in the crib. Like, they thought that they were going to slowly transition out of capitalism, like literally. So there was and that was senior economists within, you could say that they were naive or whatever, but there was legitimately people there making economic decisions that were saying that. This is what I don't think people really study what was going on in the 30s. I have a feeling a lot of people talk about the New Deal who've done nothing but read Wikipedia pages. Like, I'm starting to suspect that may be the case. I'm trying to think of like a place I can get something quick about this.
Programs were socialist programs, broadly speaking.
But we didn't become like a democratic socialist society with multiple parties and stuff like that. Imagine more than 2 parties.
And there were people who were pushing to make that happen. And FDR, to head that off, was forced to do the programs of the New Deal.
Exactly. I mean, and there were so many people out of work, and there were, and we had like environmental devastation after, the Dust Bowl, right? And we put people to work, and we built these like service corps programs that, they did all these amazing things. They built highways, they built trains, they planted lots and lots of trees.
It was only possible because, though, people were suffering and dying and starving.
Exactly.
And there was mass homelessness, and it was a completely unrecognizable world to us that allowed that shift to happen, allowed FDR to come in and say, well, what if the government just employed everybody? What if we, massively pushed money through the system? And that was a different concept of what government could do. We've just now had the opposite revolution. I mean, Trump was elected.
I'm thinking about what I could do to. I'm gonna have to think deeply because I don't have my library anymore. It's rotting in some box somewhere, in a bunch of boxes somewhere,
and is now waging a campaign of, hey, what if we don't have government at all? What if we fire everybody willy-nilly? Doesn't matter what they did. We don't even need to know what they did. We're just going to fire them all. We're going to burn the whole thing to the ground, like the fire in Altadena and the Palisades. That's what we're going to do to the government.
And it's going on right this moment.
Yeah.
Right this moment. And it's going to continue. I mean, I heard somebody was talking about like the Project 2025 like stages, and we're in stage 2. And there are multiple stages to address the problem of the government, right? And it's going to get bigger and bigger, and more people are going to be out of work, and fewer of the systems that we all rely on. Like, I know of a friend who posted recently that they got a letter about how the services that their kid had in the public schools because they had a learning disability, those are gone. I mean, and Department of Education, well, from what I understand, like Elon Musk has been, posting about how, that doesn't exist anymore. USAID is already gone. Department of Education will be gone. AmeriCorps, which I work with a lot, probably gone soon. I mean, so all of these systems, and the question of what will actually work and how it will actually work and what our taxes are going to be paying, those are interesting questions.
But if your thesis is that things have to get worse before they get better, and they are about to get worse, sounds like they would need to be worse for like a decade before we get, the counteraction of people really feeling how bad things are going to get and having a political, like the Great Depression was not short. Herbert Hoover was in office for a full term. And, we had before that decades and decades of, corrupt oligarchic government, right, in this country. And so are we in for, do we really need to feel the effects of the federal government being decimated? I mean, do we need millions of people to be dying of, tainted meat again before we are able to start inspecting meat?
Well, I mean, here's the question: is how long do we think it will last to feel the effects of these changes that Donald Trump is making in his administration? I don't think we're talking 10 years. I think we're talking less than 2.
Okay.
And I mean, quite frankly, I believe that we will be seeing people mobilizing the streets in much more like en masse and in much more aggressive ways within the next 6 months is my expectation. I don't think we're going to wait that long. I mean, we have what, you know, in the environmental world, they have this phrase called the polycrisis, which is all about all these different crises that will happen simultaneously. And many of them
You know what the crisis is called? It's called capitalism. There, I helped you.
Talking about like climate change and ecological degradation, et cetera, and so forth, right? But I actually think that we have this crisis of democracy that's coming and going to crash into these other crises that we're experiencing, including the climate crisis, which California has experienced, Florida has experienced, North Carolina has experienced. I mean, it's happened all over the country where there are pockets of people who have experienced the climate crisis. That's going to happen more and more because we haven't addressed the problem. And that will be merging with all of these people who expect FEMA is going to help them. FEMA is going to be gone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so the idea that it's going to take years, I don't think so. Like, can we get to the other side quickly? I don't know. And to what degree can we really believe that these people are going to leave peacefully, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can we really imagine that?
The problem is, are the people who are affected by the changes or by the climate crisis or by Trump's actions, are they going to pin the blame properly? I mean, here in Los Angeles, we've got, you know, tens of thousands of people newly homeless.
Right.
The conversation is not about the climate crisis. You know, that is not, hey, what is LA going to do about the climate crisis? It's complaining about which reservoir had how much water in it and where the fire trucks were, you know, and there is there's improvements to be made, right? But like the problem was the pattern of development. And
I mean, yes, but also no. You know, the United States has like hundreds of strategic heavy bombers, and we have how many water bombers, right? Like that were available to fight the fires. Like the United States of America is not hardened, not even close. All right, chat. I'm good calling it there. But before we go, I wanted to show you guys something to make you feel a little bit better. Support for Israel plummets among Americans, reaching the lowest in 25 years of Gallup's annual tracking and below 50%. Support for Israel among Democratic voters has crashed, leaving the AIPAC-aligned Democratic leadership totally out of step with their party. Democrat sympathies in the Middle East situation 2001 to 2025. Democrats 59% are more sympathetic to the Palestinians and only 21% more sympathetic with the Israelis. It is crashing off a cliff. Thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you, Netanyahu. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I'm sorry we didn't get to the drama with Hassan and Ethan Klein and Elon. We'll talk about that tomorrow. I wanted to let it cook a little bit more. I want to let it cook a little bit more before I throw my 2 cents in. You know, I feel like it was a little bit too early for me to get a good drama take. Tomorrow will be better. So, and it's not just drama. It's like, oh my God, they're actually going to try to kill me and Hassan. Like, obviously Hassan is the major target, but I'm definitely the kind of like bonus objective. All right, everybody. I'll see you all soon. And free Palestine.
Transfer your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no rights. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. Listening to Mike from PA unites the world in song. So come